I think it's become a much more accessible industry. And I think
Mm-hmm.
young artists coming into it already know a lot of what they need to know in terms of like how to
Mm-hmm.
market themselves. If they're a part of social media, if they're part of, streaming platforms, they know how they work. They can tell what's getting playlisted and they can see what type of content works and what doesn't. It's more of the like playing this whole thing as a marathon and not a race. That's really hard, I
Yeah.
think, for new artists to learn when they come in. They sign to a new label deal and they want like instant success. And
Yeah.
it's just not that. Sometimes we're lucky and we get support right away, but more often than not, it's a bit more of a marathon and it's a bit more of a pace and like, trying to establish uh, some authentic listeners, people who are going to come back
Mm-hmm.
and stream and building up your relationships and playing the long game.
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. I am so glad you're back with us today. And here's the thing. This is part 2 of our interview. So if you haven't checked out part 1 yet, go back and check that out because there's a lot of groundwork for stuff that we might refer to today. You might want to watch it first. So check that out and then come back and join us and let's get going. So talking about the boards and foundations that you work with, you are a board member of Factor, Creative BC, Radio Starmaker Fund, and the Canada Independent Music Association, as well as Advance. Before we get into each of those things specifically, beyond the door being opened and the invitation being extended, what is it that drives you to want to be involved and part of the industry from that perspective?
So I think CIMA, the Canadian Industry Music Association, was the first one that I joined. That's the first board I was on, and I had never had any board experience before then. So CIMA's really connected me with the rest of the industry. That's where I met a lot of other, indie labels that were doing this, having the same challenges that we're having. And that really made it easy for me to get a glimpse of what the whole industry is dealing with. They're very much about advocating. So, so CIMA's been a very important board for that purpose. And then, so we have Creative BC, which has been a really exciting board experience as well. That's based in BC, obviously. It is a sort of independent nonprofit that was started by the province, and it's focused on developing local BC talent and BC companies. But it's a very interesting one because it's not just music. That one is film and TV and publishing and interactive media. So I get a sense of the creative sector through that position there. And that's been really cool. StarMaker has a really pointed purpose and it's very like direct to artists. So that one's mostly focused on funding tours and tour related marketing. And it's like a very simplified process for artists to access these funds. They have a really beautiful program with Orion that lowers barriers for people of color to get access to those funds. And all of these boards kind of touch on different needs in the industry and give me some perspective on what artists are challenged with, what other labels are challenged with, what the government is doing, what the new sort of what their focus is, and doing some advocation for our industry and being a voice also for indie labels and for people on the West Coast. And it's just been a really great way to connect with the industry, with artists, and with like the funding models in a more like clued in way. And then Advance, I don't sit on their board, but I've dealt with their membership committee, and the work that they're doing to keep Black people at the forefront of all of these conversations has been really important to me too. So it's not something I could have done when I was younger and like more, I guess, insecure. Like I've sort of grown into this ability to use my voice and have an opinion and feel like I have enough experience behind me to know what I'm talking about. But it's been, I think it's been like a two-way street. Like I am able to use my voice and offer my knowledge, but also I'm gaining a lot from being at the table with all of these people who also know what they're talking about and what they're challenged with.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with Factor, which stands for the Foundation Assisting Canadian Talent on Recordings, for anyone listening who doesn't know. And for listeners who may not know about Factor, P.S. if you're a musical artist in Canada, you should know about Factor. And frankly, all the rest of these that we're talking about too. But for those who don't know about Factor, can you walk us through it and why artists want to get familiar with the organization and its programs?
Yes. I mean, if you are a Canadian artist, you should be familiar with Factor and Starmaker, and depending where you are, your local music association as well. But Factor is built to support your career development from the ground up. They have a program that will help to fund almost every level of activity as an artist, from emerging artists all the way up to artists who are, more established and are signed, growing careers, or they are, have a great career ahead of them and they own their rights. There's something for everyone there. There's some way to participate for everyone at Factor. They have done a really great job of developing programs to support you at whatever level that you're at. And that's a national, that's a federal program. So it's open to all Canadian artists, but also labels, companies, labels, managers, publishers, event producers. There's something for everyone at Factor. So that's a really important one that you should know. I feel like if you're a Canadian musician, you know about Factor.
I hope so. If not, link is in the show notes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you happen to know, is there, like, we have some listeners that are from the US. Is there any kind of equivalent program in the US to Factor for Canadians?
I don't think there is. And I hear that a lot when I'm traveling. I think that there are not many equivalents anywhere in the world. I think we're pretty lucky as Canadians to have this. There's some structures in other places, but as far as I know, there isn't like an alternative version of Factor across the border. It's we're a very lucky country that way to have government support for the arts. Whether it's, music or film or TV, there's quite a bit of artistic support here, which is really great.
Yeah.
It also allows us to sort of get on a competitive level with, our US counterparts, because we in the US, you see a lot of American creators in whatever format they're doing. But in Canada, you see Canadian creators, but you also see a lot of Americans. So it's, we're already sort of competing in that way. And I think a lot of these funding agencies help to make sure that what we're creating, our content, our music, our marketing, stands on a certain level that can share the stage.
Yeah. And I think that that's such an important piece, because I think the difference between Canadian and American is maybe less evident in the music industry. But I know maybe this is shifting now too, but for years, for instance, you could turn on the TV and you could tell whether something was a Canadian production or an American production,
for sure.
right?
Yeah.
So having things like this in place that, like you say, help equalize that playing field, it's an important support system to bring that all to an equal playing field. Yeah.
Yeah. It provides the right supports to make sure that we can export music to a level that the world needs it to be.
Yeah. Let's talk about Creative BC. So as you alluded to earlier, Where Factor is a national foundation, Canada-wide. Creative BC is specifically for artists within British Columbia, and also not just musical artists, but I think that your involvement is probably primarily in the musical division, right? In the music division. Yeah. So again, do you want to talk about who needs to be familiar with it and what sort of programs there are?
Yeah. So Creative BC does a similar thing. It was created by the provincial government to help sustain and grow creative sectors in BC. So, like I said, it's music, but it's also film and TV and interactive media and book publishing and all of these creative sectors. And it's heavily supported by the provincial government. So on the music side, again, it's there to help fund initiatives for artists at many different levels. They have a few different funds, and it's all done through Amplify, which is a large funded program by the BC government. And it will fund things like live events in BC. They have a program called Record in BC, which is actually meant for people outside of BC to come and experience recording in BC to help studios here and help that economy. They have, music initiatives, and there's ways that you can apply for, video and recording and marketing and new business. And like a company like ours could apply for new business initiatives to keep our company trying new things and new technologies and maybe trying a new role in the company. Like they will help. They'll have programs that may help subsidize some of that and keep you on your feet and allow you to grow. They also have great resources. So it's not just funds, but it's also just like a bit of a hub for all of those creative sectors to meet people, have some resources. They're a bit of a leader in showing the industry or the local economy how to stay ahead and be creative and support it, which is really, really great. So definitely take a look at Creative BC if you're not already in the loop.
Yeah. And again, we will have links to all of these different foundations in the show notes. So check those out. Do you want to talk about the Radio Starmaker Fund? Who needs to know about it? What is it? And I actually made a point of making note of the application deadlines for 2024
because good for you.
I did. One of them is going to be just before this. I know it's not yet, but it will be just before this episode airs. But there are two more after the episode airs. So.
Yeah, so they have deadlines available all the time on their website. There's multiple deadlines throughout the year. StarMaker is privately funded by radio broadcasters. That's how it was started. And it's meant to put money back into the economy to get artists out there and growing their careers. They have a very clear guidelines, and it's a pretty simple process. You have to have, a great application, but basically if you're an artist that's touring, you want to look at StarMaker. They are there to help fund domestic tours as well as international tours, and showcases and marketing related costs to those tours. And they're, again, at many different levels. You do have to meet a sort of threshold, a sales threshold there. So there's a bit of an expectation that you're an artist that's like, making an impact. You're doing something, got something boiling there. But then they also have the Orion program, which has lowered the barriers for people of color to apply with a lower sales threshold. And that's to make sure that everybody has access to this program. So it's definitely another one to check out. It's really great structure over there too.
Excellent. So as you have interacted with obviously lots and lots of artists over the course of your career, in a lot of different types of relationships too, is there anything that you see often missed or misunderstood by up and coming artists in the industry?
Do you mean like from the artist perspective?
I mean, it's a very general question, but I mean, when new artists, and this often correlates to young in age, but not only, when they come in, often they don't know what they don't know. And so sometimes they come in missing pieces of information that would make life easier or make their process or pathway easier, but it's just because they're green that they haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn, right? Like it is kind of an overwhelming industry if you peel back the curtain. I'd say there's a bit of a learning curve, but it's all doable. I think you just need to be involved in your career. You got to trust the people that are around you, like us project managers or your day-to-day manager. They're like an extra band member. They're really a big part of your career, and there's a trust level that should happen there for them to explain things to you. But, I think it's become a much more accessible industry. And I think young artists coming into it already know a lot of what they need to know in terms of like how to market themselves. If they're a part of social media, if they're part of, streaming platforms, they know how they work. They can tell what's getting playlisted and they can see what type of content works and what doesn't. It's more of the like playing this whole thing as a marathon and not a race. That's really hard, I think, for new artists to learn when they come in. They sign to a new label deal and they want like instant success. And it's just not that. Sometimes we're lucky and we get support right away, but more often than not, it's a bit more of a marathon and it's a bit more of a pace and like, trying to establish some authentic listeners, people who are going to come back and stream and building up your relationships and playing the long game. The long game has shortened quite a bit. Now people want music really quickly and the cycle shifts really fast. You can have a song that does well on streaming platforms and then the next song comes out 4 weeks later or 3 weeks later and it doesn't do well, or vice versa. You have a song come out 2 weeks later, another one comes out and that one does better. You need to be a bit more reactive, ready to sort of shift gears wherever there's a bit of a flame happening. But it's, trying to pace yourself as an artist, I think is a bit of a learning curve. Otherwise, all the day-to-day of it, like all the pieces that need to happen. I think there's a lot of, I think there's a big blind spot to all the different pennies. Like it, back in the day, you would get a certain amount of money from your CDs and a certain amount from tour, and that was pretty much it. But now there's 50 different streams of revenue, and knowing where all that money is and what it means and how to collect it all properly and where to register. That's, a bit of a learning curve too, but we're here to help with that.
So, I mean, that's a really big deal, that one. So if you are an artist signed, the project manager helps spearhead all that stuff, I'm assuming.
We do, and it depends if we're management or not too, but Yes, we have like a whole system in our company. We have a person whose full-time role it is to make sure that all those registrations are happening on every single track. Yeah.
And can you give an idea for someone like just coming in as an independent artist? They're not signed, so they don't have a PM they're working with. What do those different streams of income, I mean, ticket sales from touring, yes. Money from streaming or record sales, yes. Merch sales, yes. Beyond that, beyond the really like obvious pieces like that, can you talk about what are the other revenue streams that people maybe just aren't aware of to even think about?
Yeah, they're sort of the key places you want to be registered, like all of those things you just mentioned. But it also depends if your music is played or streamed anywhere, if you get any radio play, or if you are streamed on satellite radio, or you're playing live shows. You should be signed up for SOCAN and registering all your set lists there, because you can get paid for your live performance. You need to have your collections at Sound Exchange for the US. You want to have it at Connect or Soaprock or one of those companies in Canada. And there's affiliates in different countries. There's different versions in the UK versus the US and such. But there are a lot of places that can give you these resources on how to track your pennies. Like you want to look to your local music association. Here in BC, we have Music BC that has really great resources for this type of thing. SEMA is often doing presentations for independent artists to learn about their music royalties and their publishing rights. And I would definitely suggest following some of those seminars and sessions to learn. It's a bit of a web. And some things I'm still learning, like some stuff I'm still trying to figure out. So it's not easy by any means, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of information to try and wade through. And really overwhelming at the beginning to understand how it all works, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
What do you think? So again, the unique perspective of having worked with lots of artists over the year and been able to see the career of lots of artists over the year. What do you think creates a career with longevity?
Persistence, and a thick skin. This industry is not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of no's, constant no's, like way more no's than yeses, even for those established artists. It's just a constant battle to do the art you want, the way you want to do it, and get it heard is just, it's so much more complicated than it should be. And so having a bit of a thick skin and some persistence is really important. Being good at your craft, you can't fake it. So you got to be a good singer-songwriter or a good musician. You're going to have to really hone those skills and be confident in what it is you do. And that first, and then the rest kind of follows. Learn about all these jobs, learn what the project manager should be doing, and learn what a manager should be doing, and surround yourself with good people, make connections, be present, get out there. And, during COVID, this was way harder to do this on Zoom, make connections and get out there. But I think we've kind of returned to a more normal society where you can go out and make fans again, which is so nice. I actually feel like this year is the first year, like the, sort of last half of 2023. And this year feels like the first time we're really back to making in-person fans and being able to sort of be unrestricted with our in-person activities. So I would suggest, keeping active that way. But
yeah, that was a long arc that whole COVID thing really threw a wrench in honestly the whole landscape of the music industry, because of the live performance piece of it was just non-existent and took a long time to recover. long
It
time to
was. It's
recover.
almost hard to believe it even happened now. Like I was just remembering the other day that feeling of like, okay, well, I guess everything has to be a live stream now, and like,
Yeah.
trying to pivot into live streams and thinking that was going to save music, and then everybody just burning out on that in like 2 week period of time. It was, everybody all of a sudden was just sick of live streams, and it wasn't going to have the impact that live music has. You can't replace that.
Yeah.
You can't replace the feeling of finding a band or an artist and seeing them in person and experiencing that. Although we have, there's lots of great tech that came out of it. There's definitely, a higher reliance on platforms like Spotify or, wherever, YouTube, wherever you stream music. And music discovery has opened up quite a bit. And, we had to be more creative with marketing initiatives. There's like a lot more noise now. It's like you're really having to battle to get that bit of attention that someone might have when they're, flicking through their timeline. But I welcome the challenge. We've gone through some pretty severe shifts in the industry before. Maybe nothing like COVID, but we've come through it. So we'll come through this too. I do feel like we've returned to a more engaged industry now, and things are exciting again. And now it's a weird mix. Now it's like you can do the live thing, you need the live thing, and you need to tour, and you need to have some sort of in-person events. But you can also form great relationships just on camera, right? Like on TikTok or on socials, wherever that might be. You can have a really good connection with your fans that way now.
Well, people did burn out on it, but long term, it became so much more part of the accepted way we, it's like people work on Zoom now. Everybody does. It's just part of the work landscape now. It's just part of the music landscape now, is through a screen in a way that didn't exist before.
Yeah, now it's become part of the plan. You need to have all of these things. You can't just rely on one way of marketing or not one single way of doing this. You can't just play a show and expect you're going to make it. Yeah. Like, even if you get a great show, even if you get a great opening spot and you're opening an arena, that might not be the thing that breaks you anymore. Now, you need to be doing a bit of everything. You need to be on all the places, and people need to be able to find you and be reminded about you. Also, because people's attention spans are so much shorter now that they might discover you and then forget about you the next day, and you got to like remind them every couple of weeks that you're here and active and doing stuff. It's a lot of work. It's, I think it can present some burnout for artists, I find, but I think we're trying to find healthy ways to make this sustainable, make that kind of album cycle sustainable. Yeah.
If someone was interested in getting into the business side of the music industry, what kind of advice would you have for them, or what kind of a pathway would you suggest from your vantage point?
I would say that's still one thing that hasn't really changed in the 20 years I've been doing this. It's still similar pathways in, which is just to know somebody or just to put yourself out there. I mean, it's not, we do post a lot of jobs on LinkedIn and stuff like that. So there's more ways to apply for a role here, but it's very helpful to just do your own networking and ask about different jobs in the music industry. Like there's a wide array of roles that can be covered. And I find many people don't know what they can, how their skills transfer into this type of industry. So ask questions. Sometimes I do Zooms or calls with people who are just curious about how to get in, and I'll like offer some advice. So just send an email and ask. Keep an eye on LinkedIn. There's always roles posted there. And as far as like training and stuff like that, there are some programs. Like I know we have one in BC at Capilano University where they teach arts and entertainment management, and that's a good way in because there's internships as part of that program. There's another one back east. I think it's Humber College that does a similar program that offers internships. That's a great way in.
Ryerson in Toronto does as well.
Yeah.
They've got the it's not Ryerson anymore, whatever it's called now. Toronto Metropolitan University. I can't remember. They changed their name. But they've got
Always
the creative industries.
To me.
I know. It's where my daughter went. She went through the creative industries program, actually. So that's why I know it exists. She just focused more in dance, but they have like music and dance and I think probably film and fashion and a bunch of different things. But and that's a 4-year degree that has it's the business side of the artistic endeavors kind of.
Wow.
Together.
Those are great ways to get in. We've hired a number of people out of those type of programs. So that's a great way to get in. There's a few ways to get in, but usually it kind of starts with just networking, just talking to people and sending a message, shoot your shot.
Yeah. I think that's a really underrated piece of this is how much of, and I mean, honestly, it comes up again and again with different guests, but how much of the music business is built on relationships. It is built on those, you meet somebody at a show, you stay in touch, however those relationships come to be, nurturing those relationships is a really important part of business. It is not extra. It is the main event, honestly.
100%. It is a huge part of this industry. In fact, sometimes it can lean a little political, like just like who to get into these things. And having some networking skills is going to get you somewhere in this industry for sure. Yeah. And I rely a lot on the industries or the relationships that I've had for years, right? The people I met 10, 15 years ago are still impactful now. And the longer I build those relationships, I try not to use them very often. You gotta be respectful, be mindful. Yeah. But they do come in handy, and it's all about relationships. As a young artist, as a new person to the industry, as a new professional, you got to start somewhere. And sometimes that's just going for a coffee. You can start with like places like Music BC or, find an intern in one of these companies and ask about their experience. Like there's a lot of ways to network, but you do have to put yourself out there. That's always going to be beneficial. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I just appreciate you joining me today, Kesi. I really appreciate your time and all of your knowledge. Where can people find you? Web, socials, all the things?
I have tried to make it a little harder to find me, I think. On socials,
all right. Fair enough. That's fair.
I went through like the whole Carly experience, and I walked away with probably 5,000 Carly Rae Jepsen Instagram followers. And I just was like, I don't need all these people. So I am available on LinkedIn though, and I'm happy to, answer questions and point people in the right direction whenever I can. So LinkedIn's always a great spot to find me. And I think our contacts are on our website, even the 604 Records website. If you want to reach out to me, I'm super happy to answer anyone's questions or help guide anybody in whatever way I can.
Well, I appreciate your generosity and your time today. And it's been really nice to sit here chatting.
Oh, thanks so much, Sarah. I am always happy to chat with you anytime. So I appreciate you having me on. Hopefully I have something like important to say. I always have this like imposter syndrome. Like, do people do you really want to hear what I have to say? But hopefully it's helpful.
I get that, but I do. I think that you've got some really important stuff to say and a really unique perspective that is an important part of the whole puzzle. I mean, the music industry is a puzzle, and this is one important piece of it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a constantly shifting puzzle too, which makes it hard to be, knowledgeable in any one area. But it's I'm always happy to talk about it. I think it's a really interesting conversation all the time. So thank you for having me, and happy to be here, and happy to chat with anybody who is interested in chatting after this.
Thanks again.